Hello, Infiniteers! I am starting a new series today, but this one will be a little different than what I normally do. Normally, I like to completely design and build a new toy box before I ever show it to you, because it usually takes several iterations before I'm happy with it, and it often requires rework to get it to look right and fit within the limited toy box memory. But with everything going on right now in my life, I don't have time to do that. I am busy taking care of Mrs. Toy Box, and I just have not had much opportunity to work on designing any new toy boxes in advance of showing you anything. But occasionally, I do get a little time to myself when I can try to build something, and I want to continue providing new content for you. And so I thought that I would take one of the many toy box ideas floating around in my head and just start building it and record it as I go and see what happens. And this way you can watch me build a toy box from scratch and maybe get an idea of how I go about designing and building a toy box. I am a big fan of Disney's classic adventure movies, and one of my favorite movies is Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And for a long time, I have been wanting to see if I could build Captain Nemo's submarine, the Nautilus, in the Disney Infinity toy box. And so that's what I'm going to attempt to do. Now, I have no idea if this is possible or how much memory this might take. I might get into this build and decide it looks awful and give up on it. Or I might surprise myself and build a ship that looks fairly decent. I honestly have no idea. And if you're watching this later, and I eventually make a preview trailer for this series, then you'll already know how this turns out, but at this point I have no idea. But I think that's going to be part of the fun, because I'm recording this as I go, and you're going to have the opportunity to comment on it and provide your own input and feedback. And who knows, some of your suggestions and ideas might just find their way into this toy box. So I think the first thing I want to do is set the sky to something that I know I will use for this series, or for this toy box eventually. And I want something that has obviously some ocean in it. And I could use the open sea sky, but I don't really want a nighttime sky. I could use the underwater sky, and eventually I would like to do that because I think it'd be fun to be able to submerge the submarine and come back up. So I might use the ocean paradise at some point. I think it'd be fun to have a button on the bridge that does that. But I think for the build, I'm going to use the one from Lilo and Stitch, Lilo's Tropical Sky. So I'll set that to be my sky. Alright. Now, I have done a little preparation for this series. I've been watching the original movie, and I've taken some screenshots that I can use for reference material. And I'm going to begin with what I think is probably the most challenging part of this build, and that is the Grand Salon in the center of the ship. If I can't build this and have it look decent, then there's no point in going any further. At least that's what I'm thinking. And one of the big features in this room is the huge round viewport on either side, which looks out into the ocean. This is a must-have feature for this room to look correct. Another feature is the huge organ, which you see when you enter this room from the front of the ship, looking to the stern. And this is the opposite end of that room, where the previous photo was taken. And you can see there's an interesting mix of materials here. There's a riveted steel texture here for the hull and interior surfaces. There are wooden bookcases and padded seats and rugs and all kinds of stuff. Once upon a time, Disneyland had a submarine ride that was based on the Nautilus, and they had recreated some of the ship's movie sets, and I found some pictures of that online. Here's a photo of the organ. And the lighting here in this shot gives us a much better look at the furnishings and the structure of the room. And here's a shot of the middle of the room. You can see there's metal pipes running along the ceiling, And except for the floor, there are very few flat surfaces. You can also see there's a sunken seating area by the viewport on the left there. And so this is what I'm going to try to build. And so let's just start building and see what happens. So I think the first thing I'm going to do, for the texture on the floor, I'm going to use Calhoun's command, that power disk. So let me put that down. Sure. Not going to keep this block, but I think the top of this will look pretty good for the floor of the submarine. And I like the sides. That looks pretty decent. If you don't have this, you can use the kiln texture, and I think that would be okay. And I'm going to come way up here, about that far up, and I'm going to build the submarine up here, because if this all works, I'm going to want some room below to maybe build an underwater area. And as far as the orientation of this goes, I don't want the submarine to look like it's coming into or out of the harbor here. And so I think I'm going to run the submarine lengthwise this direction versus the other way. So we'll drop this here. I'll go ahead and set my theme to Calhoun's command. Again, if you don't have that power disk, I think the kiln texture here would work. The sides are a little bit not right, but the top of it would be fine. Alright, I'm going to use this for the middle of the floor that runs down the middle of the room. I'm not sure how many yet I'm going to need, so I'll start with that. And we'll put the front of the ship over that way. So the stern with the organ on it will be down there. Now, for that big window, I am thinking that the viewport here for the Death Star throne room window is going to look the best. I think that'll work pretty well. But that is huge. That's a lot bigger than I remember. So, also this sits down a little ways. So let me just drop that there for right now. And let me think about the walls here for this. And we had that riveted steel for the walls. And I think there's actually a texture here that has rivets in it. And I know this build isn't going as smoothly as some of my previous builds, because I haven't built this before and I'm not working off a pattern. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good actually. I'll set that to be my theme. That looks good. That has the rivets on it, and I think that could work. Okay, so I think we have some basic pieces here. We have the floor, we have a texture for the walls that will look similar to what we have. We have a window, and now it's just a matter of building this thing, having it look right. So I think first thing I want to do is get this down to the height there. I don't want the room to be any taller than 3 blocks high. And then let's slide this out a little ways. We'll come back down here. Oops, not there. And I'm going to throw a couple little blocks underneath here. No, just one. I'm going to center that under there like that. And that'll give me the spacing I need, because I want this 2 blocks wide down here in this sunken area. And I want to do that on both sides, because I want to leave some room to be able to step down into this area and maybe put a couple of couches here so that the player can look out the viewport. Alright, so then we'll slide this up to the end. But yeah, I'm kind of figuring this out as I go. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I kind of have an idea for a starting point, but how well this works beyond that, I don't know. The room that comes in here, there's an entryway that comes in, and there's kind of an angled wall there, so I think we're going to do that. And that'll be the doorway with the stairs leading up into the entrance. They come down the stairs, they enter the salon, and going that way, and already the shape of this room is looking much better than I was thinking I was going to get. I like this so far. All right. Let's try putting... Well, let's try moving this over. I want to try to avoid as many terrain seams as I can. We'll put this in the middle there like that. So that creates kind of a little entranceway there. We can have some steps or something here. And I could use the stairs up under the basic blocks, but I'm not sure I have a floor texture there that's going to go well with this texture here. And actually this comes out a little bit further. This might want to sit back here like this. Although that doesn't leave much floor there, does it? But anyway, I'm thinking maybe the better solution might be to use a ramp. And we have some ramps here in the terrain drawer. This little narrow ramp, for example. And the texture on that just looks better to me. Now, I have no idea if this is going to be wide enough to put a couch there. Maybe I end up taking this little ramp out and sticking a cube in here or something. But for right now, we'll leave it like that. So that gives us our little step down into that area. And then over here, we can go ahead and do what we did on the front there. My idea for this toy box is what would happen if Davy Jones happened to find the Nautilus resting on the ocean floor, and what he might do with it. And I think that would be a fun toy box idea to explore. And it would be really cool to be able to have the submarine on the surface and be able to submerge and explore under the sea and surface, and maybe have some ship battles up top on the surface of the water. I think that could make for a fun toy box. Alright, this is looking pretty good. I could put some of these along here, but maybe to save memory and have it look a little better, I'll use the wall. A large block wall. Put that in there. I know I'll need something under there to plug that gap, because you can kind of see. Yeah, it might be easier to come out of the editor. You can kind of see there's a gap under here. So eventually we'll need something there. But yeah, okay, so you come inside. That's looking pretty good. The structure, that's good. The walls are a little square, but I just kind of want to frame this in first, and then we'll see what we can do about making that look a little bit less blocky. Well, let's see. I would probably want to put, I don't know if it's better to put a wall here. Probably better to put blocks in here. give this wall here some thickness. And I kind of wish we had a block like this that stood on end. And in the past I've used a path creator to kind of stand this up on end, and I may end up doing that again, just to add some curvature here. But I don't want to try to do that today. I just kind of want to frame in this room and see what it's going to look like. So for right now, we'll just kind of put those in. And I'll just drop this in here for the moment. Okay, so there's 2 doors on either side of that organ that go in here, and then there's a long corridor here, which we'll look at in the future, depending on how far we decide to go with this build. All right, for the ceiling, let's see what we have to work with. We could use blocks like this, but the edge is a little straight on that. I don't think I want to do that. And like I said, we can stand these up on end potentially. Kind of look like structural ribs for the ship. We have these, which I don't think are really going to work right. Could stick this arch in there, but that's going to look too big, and that doesn't really fit the look of the movie anyway. These would be perfect for the pipes running along the end, along the ceiling. Unfortunately, we don't have one standing on end. We do have this block and its mate over here, but I'm thinking that these are a little bit too big for the pipes running along the ceiling. So I don't think I want to use these. Just to see what this would look like. If we did something like this. Yeah, that doesn't quite look like what's underneath the Nautilus. We could maybe run one of those down the middle and then use this small thing connected to a block to to a path to rotate it on its side, and I think that's what I may have to end up doing. I think this is a little bit too big. Oops. And that's not the shape that I want for the room anyway. What I'm thinking is possibly using one of these, because we can kind of get a little bit of shape to this room if we use this. So we put one on either side with a block in the middle. Like that. And run that all the way down, and that gives us kind of a nice arched shape that matches the submarine. And that probably will be what I end up doing. And then, like I say, if we take the pillar block and attach it to a path, turn it on its side, and then run a row of those down the side here, that would probably, connect it under there. It'll look like it's protruding from under the ceiling, but the ceiling has the basic shape. This will add some detail to the ceiling, which will look good. The other possibility, these are not going to work because they're just too weird looking. The other possibility, though, is using this upside down beam and sticking this up at this level, but then we have like a flat area on the side because it doesn't go all the way down. And because of these windows over here, I don't want this to stick up too high. I can't bring it too low, so this is going to impact with the window. So the ceiling has to sit up about this point. But I don't want to make this room too big because then it starts to get away from the scale in the movie. The other thing we have to consider is the top side of this when we build it. So for example, I don't want the submarine to be too tall. And my concern is if I put this up here like this for the side of the submarine, is that going to impact with this? See, I can put this like that, but this is going to leave a gap right underneath here. And I can't put anything under there to plug that gap because it's going to give me the collision boundary. Oops. I could raise this up like that, but now this room starts to get really tall, and I just don't like the look of that. And I'm afraid the other possibility is if I drop this window down, this is probably going to be, yeah, that's too low. That's too low. In order for it to have the right look, it's got to sit up at that higher level like that. So I may have to use a path to put another row of these blocks in here, or a block underneath here, so I can plug this gap. But if I do that, oh, that won't impact the arch underneath. Good. So yeah, I could use a path to do that and run, let's see, 2, 3, 4 of these across here with a path. So that could work. Before I forget that that's what I'm thinking, I'm going to put this down over here. Alright, so I'm kind of figuring out the structure of the room here, as you can see. But I like the basic shape. This is good, and I think this may give us the look we need for this. Let's just try dropping a path in here. And see what we can do with that cylinder. Alright, so to do this, we're going to want to rotate it on its side. So we're going to want this up at the top. And I'm not quite sure yet where to put this. Alright, so if we put the first point here, it's going to sit on top of that. No, it's going to sit out off to the side. Probably be better to do it like that. And then down and over. And we'll exit. And let's change the path properties here. We need to turn off auto start objects and set the loop flag. And let's attach our block and see what we can do with it. And we'll just set this out here for right now. And I'll put a couple of these out. Alright, so the first block, we'll do a new path connection. Connect that to our path. And under the properties, we need to put the reset point. Let's orient along the path. Set the reset point to about 1/4 of the way around, 25% of the way around the path here. And that's kind of a weird angle there, isn't it? All right, let's drop a button down here so we can push that button and put this thing at its final resting spot. And maybe even just use a trigger. When stepped on by any we'll do a reset and stop. All right, so that gives us a pipe. That thing is now rotated on its side, coming out into the room. And that's interesting. I think it flipped over on its side. Can't select that block now. There we go. Curious. Put that at 24. I was expecting this thing to stick out from the side of that rib, not be underneath that block, and I'm thinking because it came down past that point, maybe it flipped. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was expecting to see. But now the angle on that's kind of funny. All right, let's just try another pipe here. A lot of times when you're building with paths, it's just a matter of playing with it and seeing what happens. Now, before we set the reset point, I'm wondering how I'm going to get this thing to sit out on the front of that other. If we do a vertical offset, okay, and now if we rotate that, I wonder if it'll stay that far above the path or how this is going to work. Let's see what happens. We'll set this to 24. It's kind of weird that it's not standing upright, huh? It's got a little bit of an angle to it. Well, that's not quite what I was looking for. I was hoping it would rotate and sit out on the front end of that barrel, but it's not doing that. Horizontal. That's not what I want. Vertical. That's not quite what I want. So we want to take this back to, well, let's just leave it up here for right now so I can see it. Forward, backward. There we go. That's what we need. All right, we take this back. Yeah, that's going to be kind of weird looking, huh? Well, I may have to play with this and see what I can do. Let me try one more thing and then we're almost done for today. Curious if I go 25%, that should make it flat. That's going to flip it though and back it up and put it over here. If we do the same thing with this one, let's see what happens. What just happened? I think they're sitting on top of each other. Oh no, there we go. Except it's going the wrong way. Okay. Alright, so my thinking now is when we build the rib on this end of the room, sometimes you have to just not fight the toy box and just go with what it's doing. Alright, so my thinking is we move these points down there. And again, I drew it with this one first, this one second. And when it wants to rotate, it's trying to rotate clockwise as I went and increased the reset point. And as soon as I hit 25, it passed this point. And now instead of being on the outside of this, it can't be, because it always wants to put the block on the top of the path, all right? And so as soon as we come down here, the top side of the path is no longer on the outside, it's on the inside. That's why this block flipped and put it like this. Okay? This one's set at 25 as well, which means it flipped. And with the offset, it stuck it out there. So I think what we do is we leave the path oriented the way it is. And we're just going to move the path down to this end. And stick it right there. And move all of these points the same way. And just keep our little circular path. Like that. Okay. So now the path is oriented properly. And again, this is, if I'd have known it was going to do this, I would have dropped the path point here. And this is one of the differences between doing this on the fly. I would have figured all of this out ahead of time if I had built this and when I did the build series for you, I would have known what was going to happen, and I would have put the path point here to start, drawn the path there, and then down there, and then the next point there, and attached the block and set the properties, and it would end up doing what I want it to do. But there, so now that's going to do that. So that's how we're going to build that thing and carry those pipes all the way across. Now I'm going to have to detach these pipes initially in order to put the ceiling in and run this all the way across, but I don't want to do that yet until we get a little bit more work done in here. I think I'm going to want to bring the interior toys out and populate this first. And before we can even do that, I want to do something about these flat walls on the side. And so there's some more work to do here structurally, and then bring the interior toys out and populate this, and then fill in the ceiling and carry those pipes all the way across and do all of that. But I think that's enough for today. It looks like we are off to a good start. And I like the structure of this room and how it's turning out. This looks really, really good. This looks a lot like the movie. So I'm very happy with that. I think that Death Star window is going to work out better than I thought. So I'll return to this build when I have time, and I'll keep working on this room then. And I think, again, the next step is to try to make the walls look a little less square. And we'll go from there. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed my video today, and if so, please hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know what you think so far. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet and you like Disney Infinity and my toy box builds, just click my photo in the lower right corner of this video. That's all for me today. Take care.